By the way, the level 4 Ninja mock has been released now. I just asked Apurva, I think it was missed yesterday, posting on the app. So it is published now. She announced on the group also. So I'm sure you guys have seen. Can't believe we are on the level 4 Ninja mock already. And the last Ninja mock of the Feb would be left, and then you would be ready for the exam with your grand mock. So before I start today's session, as you all know, we are meeting for the third part of our implant series, and I have been focusing on the implant sessions a lot because I'm predicting and expecting a lot of newer questions on the implants to come up in the examination, because the most of the disciplines, whether it's perio, whether it's prosto, surgery, restorative, all the aspects of multiple disciplines are contained in one implant SBQ. It also evaluates your knowledge about when CBCT is needed, when you would do your basic two-dimensional radiography there. Then, as a general dentist, the maintenance phase of the implants and the case selections, lot lies in your parameters also when you start your practice in Australia. So you do understand that it actually covers a lot of disciplines. When ADC asks you ADC implant SBQs, it actually does cover a lot of subjects together. It can ask you questions on the surgical aspects, the prosthodontic, the restorative, implant on its own as well, and the periodontal, the maintenance phase, and the periodontal health of the implant, the peri-implant health. So whether it's your mucositis or peri-implantitis. So how we have started is in the first part where we did the various parts of implants and you understood if the terms were used as an exam with a newer question comes and the newer terms are given in the question, so you would feel confident to attempt those and understand the basic concepts of where each abutment is used, what is each part called as. So you would not be confused whether they are talking about whether overdentures or you're fixed on all four or single crowns on implants. In all the various possibilities of teeth replacement, you would understand the terminology. With the first part of our implant series, I hope we achieved that, right? And then the second part we did was why implants fail, because we have seen a lot of questions being asked on like the failure of the implants, identifying them, or either prevention of them or case selection, right? So, why implants fail, the second part of the implant series prepared you to identify how the implant is performing functionally, aesthetically, what can be the reasons why implant may not be performing well in the mouth, right? And patient related factors that you did in the part one of the series. So you do understand how part one and the part two of this implant series have brought you together with so much of information and concepts in just two sessions. So you just have to go back and review those two classes and the third part, and one more part I will be taking, and then the entire implant thing would be summarized for the ADC. So in these four series, all you got to do in the next month by the end of February is to review all these four sessions together, and whole and whole you would be prepared to take up any question that is given to you for the Australian Dental Council examination. So in today's part, in moving forward with first the patient related factors and the aspects of the implants, and the second part where you did why implants fail and how the challenges can be visible and what are the situations, today I'm going to cover very crucial aspect. And if you agree with me, give me a yes on the chat when you know that you have seen most importantly in examination the implant questions are getting asked related to the aging population, especially the patients in residential care or their kids bringing them, the children bringing their elderly patients, their parents, and then asking for replacement now. Whether it be single teeth, whether it be that Italian Antonio case, right? Or any cases that you have seen, whether it was, we have seen recently the overdentures also, right? The Valerie one, yes. So we have seen so many repeatedly getting newer SBQs on the aging population, and the questions are contemplating whether you can choose the cases correctly or not. Because either all old patients would be the candidate. What are the drawbacks? What are the challenges? What are the maintenance challenges? And the case selection, the cost to benefit ratio also needs to be considered. Remember, a daughter calls back and asks for she cannot afford the implant treatment and the payment plan options and all that. So these are your real first-hand experience questions from exam. And what I'm anticipating is how the trend is going, because September 25 was 70% new, and the March 25 is still going to be at least 60% new. 40% can be repeated from the repeated and predictable concepts, but 50-60% would still be newer questions. Even if there would be still from your LA, from your implants, from your prosthesis, you know the topics, the major hot topics would still be that. But there will be newer questions with newer names, newer situations, newer scenarios. To take those questions head on, what do you expect and how do you need to be prepared is by fully experiencing and understanding these core hot topics in depth. Implant is a discipline altogether. That is why I did this 4-part series on it, because till now we have been focusing on the 8 or 9 disciplines, whether it be all the 8 major disciplines and then pharmacology added on it, as you know, in our study plan also, how we do it in the initial 9 weeks. So you have been doing it like those major 9 disciplines, but implant on its own has become a discipline now, and ADC is asking you implant like that now. So it has become a new subject, and that is why this entire series. So I'm hopeful that you are looking forward to this third part, where I would talk about the implants in aging population. And when I read out the concepts to you and when I explain them to you, break it down for you, simplify it for you, you will see how easily the selection of the correct answers will become when you go for these questions in examination, right? So I'm sure everybody is ready for the same. Let's start. I hope you can see my screen. Don't mind my other references. They are for the Ultimate Advanced File lecture next week. I've started to accumulate those already. So when I'll explain this article to you, when I'll explain the guidelines, the consensus, what it says about the case selection in aging population, you will see how easy and straightforward the answers are in the examination. So what happens is, when you look at the options in the exam, do you find they're very confusing and they're very similar? But majority of the times when you do the ADJ case studies and ADJ guidelines, you have noticed that the answers are mostly straightforward and direct. There is a recommendation. Only they look very confusing when you haven't done these guidelines, when you haven't done these recommendations and case reports and consensuses. Is that right or wrong? So your ADC questions are only difficult, confusing, and very similar to those eyes who have not prepared well. But at Winspurt, we go through and dissect each case report, each latest guideline, latest articles, all the latest intracoronal tooth bleaching, everything that I've accumulated, they're all review and guidelines. So all the latest articles that we are doing, they're reviews, they're guidelines. They are not just for fun, they are actual examination answers. Without these reviews and guidelines, you will only be finding a needle in haystack. Do you want that? In the examination, on your intelligent guesses or what your experience is from your native countries? Do we want that? What we may think based on our biases, because you do understand that as healthcare providers, we also still have biases. We cannot eliminate bias unless we have a review or a guideline to guide our case selection, treatment selection, management, etc. Is that right or wrong? Because there are multiple treatment plans available for various situations. So you do have to understand that it's the reviews and the guidelines and such consensuses which are going to give you exact answers. Otherwise, you will just be going on some people's biases or just their suggestions and opinions. And trust me, opinions are just one thing. Opinions. They are not the verdict. Verdict lies in these scientific evidences and articles. Okay? So that's how we Winsperts do. We don't go by opinions, we go by solid scientific evidence and conceptual understanding, right? So implant for aging population is an extremely crucial and a very important hot topic for ADC examination. Repeatedly, majority of the implant SBQs are getting asked in the patients who are 60 plus, 70 plus, 80 plus also. This one particularly also talks about 80 plus population. Yes, even in 80 plus people, you can give implants. There is no contraindication. The cost and benefit ratio should be justified. So let's see what are the challenges and what kind of prosthesis should be preferred. So dental implant definitely has established itself over the last few decades as a lot of a very beneficial treatment plan over the traditional alternatives, which were your, fixed prosthesis or removable partial traditional dentures. Now, some age-related changes happen in the mouth, whether they are coming from systemic conditions or they're coming from oral health conditions. Along with that, there are social factors involved, economic factors involved, and the resources involved. Resources as in the patient may be in the residential care or coming from a rural area. Social factors would be, as we have seen, they could be victim of abuse or neglect by their children. There can be language barriers. Economic, as of course they don't have their own financial income stream, so they are mostly reliant on their children to fund their treatment. So these are some of the social, economic, resources considerations that you may be required to take while selecting the cases in older patients for the implants, right? So these are the complexities that you have to deal with. And this 3-word sentence, it summarizes the fact that these are the scenarios that are given to you in examination, whether there is a social problem, which you have to professionally deal, and a professionalism and a health promotion question is added there. You have seen me when I mark clusters on the ultimate advanced file, right? Each implant SBQ, due to the social or economical challenge, will have a professionalism and a health promotion question added there, right? Or a resource consideration, like if the patient is in the residential care, how would the maintenance appointments would be caught up? All that needs to be considered. Now, there are again influence of the chronic systemic disease or oral conditions like dry mouth, periodontitis, and the chronic systemic diseases also. In patient-related factors, if you remember the first part of this series, I have covered all the systemic conditions which may or may not have the impact on the case selection or implant failure. So you're well prepared with that. Social and economic barriers also. In today's class, we will little bit talk about the cost to benefit analysis, how to make that decision, judgment, and then advise the treatment to the patient, right? Then the other challenges for the older patients that you may get is the changing oral environment, and most importantly, the resources. In future, implant requires to your maintenance phase, right? So you require multiple appointments in future also to access to get your care and your maintenance appointments. There could be for repair, there could be for also in general hygiene maintenance, debridements, right? So these are your various challenges that you would find in the old age. And that is why a careful planning and a careful consideration should be done before you advise implants to aging patients. Right? Now, Australians who are aged 65 years and over had a mean number of missing teeth of 12. So it has been found that definitely anyone in Australia who's above 65, the number of teeth which are lost is still present. Still, after 65, there is not that every population would be keeping the entire dentition. The teeth loss is happening, and 12 teeth still missing at the age of 65 or plus does mean that they do require replacements. Is that right? So as the age increases, the number of teeth which are missing are also increasing, right? And with your improved oral hygiene maintenance, with your better provision of fluoridated toothpaste and reduced caries incidence, it may be reducing, but still it is present. The tooth loss is still present, and definitely it requires your teeth replacement, whether it's single tooth replacement or whether it's your multiple teeth replacement using your fixed prosthesis or removable prosthesis, right? Now, what is the barrier of age to the surgical procedure in the implant? So, old age is not a contraindication for implant therapy, but clinicians should be aware of the potential risks and medical complications and psychosocial issues that affect implant prognosis in geriatric patients. Now, any condition that will be a contraindication to surgery would be a contraindication to implant surgery. As simple as that. Is that correct or not? It is not a contraindication to implant per se. It is a contraindication to do any surgery at that point. So an only reason why you would not perform implant surgery in an old age patient is where any surgical procedure would be contraindicated. It's a very crucial point. I hope everyone gets that, right? What would that be? What those conditions would be? Usually in your myocardial infarction, cerebral cardiac episodes, right? Cerebral strokes, those are your immediate contraindications to any kind of elective procedures or surgical procedures. Is that right or wrong? Or immediately, yes, uncontrolled diabetes, where all the elective procedures or your any surgical procedures are immediately contraindicated. So these are the conditions where it is not an obvious contraindication to implant, but rather any surgery, right? So you would not call these conditions as a contraindication to implant, but rather they are contraindication to any surgical procedure. So above 80-year-old, you may think if you get questions like that, that whether you would be able to advise them, should you choose the answer of when the missing teeth situation is present, what would be the first line of treatment or what should be advised for the treatment? Can you choose implant as an answer in the examination? The answer goes out to be yes. There has been a study where the 96% implant success rate was reported and the patients were more than 80-year-olds, right? Most patients had minimal post-implant placement problems and if the maintenance and everything was done well, the case selection was done well, it was found that age was not the criteria to contraindicate the implant. The case selection has to be correct. It's a systemic disease if it's a barrier or if it leads to implant failure. That may provide you or prevent you from advising implants, but just the age alone, without the presence of a systemic condition that contraindicates implant or leads to the failure, you will not deter to or from your advising of the implants, right? All on 4 protocol is also very commonly used. We've seen that in elderly patients who are mostly expected situation in an 80 plus population would be complete edentulism. Is that correct? And that's how you have seen the cases. They would be either in residential care or under care of their children. They would be mostly completely edentulous. And in edentulous situation, there are 2 possibilities. Removable overdentures on implants or your fixed dentures on implants. Fixed dentures or implants are also known as all on four. And in fact, it may be beneficial in some patients where you may not be going for a graft surgical procedure and where the bone may be insufficient, but you cannot go with grafts, and because patient cannot withstand such long surgeries. In those cases, all on four or fixed prosthesis on your implant supported dentures are advised. But the case selection should be definitely where the patient is able to have surgery, does not contraindicate implant due to the underlying systemic disease, and is able to keep up with the maintenance appointments. Can you remember and memorize this crucial concept is divided into 3 phases, and 3 factors are responsible for the treatment planning here. 1, the patient's systemic disease. There should be no systemic condition which leads to implant failure, right? The patient should be a suitable candidate for the surgical procedure. And the third would be able to maintain the maintenance phase. Clear for everyone? 3 most important things that you would read in the history provided. No systemic disease should be present. Surgically, he should be able to undergo the long surgical procedure of implant placement. And after giving the components and giving the dentures, he must be coming up for the repairs and maintenance, because even if you give a removable overdenture on implant or fixed on all on four, the part of the abutments will have a wear and would require repair and replacements. Clear for everybody? The 3 stages of your case selection, the 3 parts, what you would observe on the history. I'm simplifying it for you so that in examination, you don't even have to struggle with the history. You will remember these 3 stages. You will immediately look for these 3 situations and you will choose your answer. As simple as that. Is that right or wrong? This is the confidence that we prepare for the examination for, right? Now, mini implants is another concept that I would like to briefly cover here, and it could be the newer concept that comes in the exam. So again, another predictive and expected concept, because ADJ has been talking about it recently a lot, even in the new journals. The mini implant concept. Although because implants in the last few years, also 10 to 15 years survival reports are also not as much available. But so same goes for mini implants also, but still it is now getting more popular for the situations where the bone diameter is less, the bone width is less, and you don't want to go for your graft surgeries. Especially in the elderly patients, many implants which have diameter less than 3 mm have been recommended in implant treatment for aged patients. They can be given in the narrow ridges to reduce the need for grafting, and they offer simple clinified procedures. Now, we have seen that in the mandibular anterior segment, the maximum thinning occurs. Is that right or wrong? In the mandible posterior, you mostly get the flattened ridge. The height is lost more. But in the anterior region, you see height and even width is also lost a lot. Even in the maxilla, you've seen height still remains, but the width is lost, right? So in those situations, the mini implant, if given to you as a choice, if an 80 plus patient comes and he wants implant and the option is given for your graft surgeries versus your mini implants, and specifically if the patient is diabetic, anyone here, and of course all the Winsports would know, we have done in the ultimate advanced file classes the latest articles where we have seen what are the contraindication to the grafts also. So you have all these solid evidences and your tools to answer those questions correctly. Now, will you be able to choose in the examination or not where graft is contraindicated and where graft is not? Everyone knows the graft's contraindication. We have covered the concept. You have it under the latest guidelines as well, latest article folder also. So apply all those tools that I'm providing you every week. There is no single evidence that I'm giving to you and which will not be applicable in the examination. You know that your knowledge and your information is your most crucial tool that you will use in the exam, right? So apply that information along with the given history. Now, where you would choose mini implants, you will bring that information in that where the grafts are contraindicated. If the patient has diabetes, he's not contraindicated to implant placement, right? Is that correct or wrong? Because he can undergo, if it's controlled diabetes, he can undergo the implant surgery, but the grafts may not be an ideal selection in those cases. And that's why mini implants are given as a choice versus your grafts. Because if you've seen in the examination, the tilted abutment has already been asked. Is that right or wrong? You've seen those questions. Whatever I'm telling you is the real life first-hand experiences of the examination. The tilted abutment is getting asked where graft would not be given. Now the next expected concept and option could be of the mini implant situation where graft would be not needed or cannot be given. Mini implants can be chosen. Another golden nugget here to take from. So they are less than 3 millimeters in diameter, and they have been recommended for the aged patients where it will reduce the need for the grafting, and it's a simplified procedure. There would be no flaps or surgical management needed in details. So there would be less traumatic surgery, definitely more better healing stage for the patient. Right? But there is not enough evidence for the long-term survival because obviously there still requires the studies for over the next decade to assure that how much they are succeeding. But this is getting recommended to avoid grafting procedures. Now, only contraindication, as I told you, the medical contraindications which can be applied, and that is why what you will look for in the examination history is your recent myocardial infarction. What is the time frame within which myocardial infarction immediate surgery is contraindicated? Everyone should know that. 6 months, absolutely. Within 6 months, no surgical procedure would be done. Then a recent cerebrovascular accident and a significant psychiatric disorders. Now, significant psychiatric disorders would mean, what would they mean? It would mean that schizophrenia, right? So schizophrenia would be and a severe one. Severe psychiatric disorders are contraindication, but neurological conditions like Alzheimer's, dementia, do they come in psychiatric disorders or neurological? If you're not aware of the distinction of those two diseases and you think that they are your psychiatric disorders, then you may not select cases correctly. So please know that your dementia and Alzheimer's come under your neurological conditions. They are not psychiatric disorders. Psychiatric disorders are behavior disorders due to altered personality types as well, right? Severe psychosis and severe schizophrenias, they would be contraindicated. But Alzheimer's and dementia, so do we get the patients of dementia or Alzheimer's? Yes, dementia and Alzheimer patients are mostly in residential care, are dependent on their nurses to provide oral hygiene. That may make you think that the implants may be contraindicated there, but it is not. And I have provided you the link and the references for the same also, that in fact they help them to keep the fixed prosthesis and they may not have the risk of forgetting the dentures, right? So implants are not contraindicated, but the case selection should be correctly based on the other systemic diseases, any contraindications to surgery, and the maintenance phases. Clear for everyone? The 3 golden criteria to choose the case and how to answer whether implant would be indicated or not. Now, osteoporosis is very important. Every time we do an implant review session, osteoporosis gets talked about. More importantly, why? Because, and if you have seen, ABC also gives you always with implant question and osteoporosis history. You've seen that. And every time we do patient related risk factor or we do why implants fail, and now in the third part also, osteoporosis definitely gets talked about a lot because majority of your female elderly patients, especially female, they suffer from osteoporosis, right? It's a systemic disease. it leads to the reduced bone density, right? It is sometimes almost unavoidable. That is why for all implant questions, this history walks in hand. You have seen that, and it is so important to know for sure where you lie in terms of whether it affects your implant case selection or not, right? So you should have a clear concept related to that, which has not been established as a risk factor for successful osteointegration of dental implants, confirmed by patients related factor article also, right? And which is the most recent, that's 2024 article. This one also confirms it. And the second part of the session that we did, why implants fail, also confirms it. Despite affecting the bone density, osteoporosis is not a risk factor. But when the use of bisphosphonate drugs is given in the same patients, and we have seen those case histories in examination, yes or no? Osteoporosis history, female patient, and the bisphosphonate therapy is also added. Either it is going to start, or it's ongoing, or the patient is on denosumab, if not bisphosphonate, but some kind of anti-resorptive therapy is also thrown into the picture. So that changes the situation a little bit. Use of your bisphosphonate, obviously it affects your bone turnover rate and the osteoclastic and resorptive activity. So it may or may not have an effect on the implant survival, right? But it completely depends upon what is the type of medication, what is the route, whether it's IV, whether it's oral, right? Whether it's denosumab, whether it's bisphosphonate, and how long it is being used. That means bisphosphonate is also not an absolute contraindication to implant, but the medical consult would be required. Is that right or wrong? And if IV therapy is going on, anyways, that's a contraindication to perform any bone invasive surgery, right? But again, before the next therapy, before the next dose, you can plan a surgical appointment for a bone invasive procedure. So involving the medical specialist in this would be a prudent thing to do. It will help you select the case. And if your patient is an ideal situation for an implant treatment, he would be advised for the same, but the planning would be done by keeping the medical specialist also in loop and taking a consult from him. Then a very important aspect which has been covered in this guideline is the menopause, how that may affect your case selection. So menopause is also associated with your reduced estrogen levels, and that can lead to your further bone resorption. Again, the risk of osteoporosis comes in. So any female patients who are in 60s and all, although they have been through their menopause, but the estrogen levels consistently remain low after menopause. So that is why postmenopausal women and all the 60s patients and 70s female patients will come into that category. They are at risk of osteoporosis. So same thing, it is a concern with implants in the maxilla, but not in the mandible. So if at all a postmenopausal patient would have some difficulty or some success rates may vary in the maxilla versus mandible, but that applies to even your normal healthy patients. In maxilla posterior region, the success rates are the lowest compared to the mandible. Is that right? We have done that concept in the last class also. The bone density being the most important factor. And that is getting again reinforced here, that bone quality is the most important local patient factor for successful treatment in the quality and quantity of bone available at the implant site, right? So local factors are what is the oral hygiene status and the bone quality. So bone quality is also very crucial local factor. So we know that the major failures occur in the type 4 kind of bone, which is the most cancellous type. This is the type 4, where the cortical bone is thinnest and the majority thickness is of the cancellous bone. So type 1 to type 3 are still successful, but the major failures have been reported in the type 4. And type 4 is found in the posterior maxillary region. Increased implant failures are mostly found in type 4 type, which is your posterior maxillas, and majority of the case selection where failure happens is in those areas only. Now another local factor. Now we have done all these cases also, right? And questions you have seen in Ultimate Advanced 5. The most important local factors, the most important, all these information and gathering cluster questions, these are all forming the basis of your information gathering cluster. Because all this you would find provided to you in the history, whether the poor oral hygiene is present or not, right? What is the remaining bone status, whether the area is in the mandible, whether the area is in the maxilla. All this is provided to you in the examination. The case selection and the diagnosis and then management planning comes. Before that, there is a cluster called information gathering. And the examination asks you questions. What are the investigations that you would do? It would include local examination, clinical examination, as well as your CBCT. Is that correct? So poor oral hygiene is also a very important local factor which is associated with bone loss and peri-implant disease. And if it is not managed, it can lead to straight implant failure. So it was demonstrated and 1,692 implants were studied that the failure rate of implants was significantly higher in the patients who have insufficient oral hygiene. So it again becomes one of the crucial factors for the case selection. And it is this with the same as in periodontitis, the pathological bacteria would lead to the tissue destruction, right? With the increased host response, inflammatory response. That's how also periodontal destruction happens. The same pathophysiology applies to your peri-implantitis, where the accumulated plaque increases the host response and leads to the bone destruction here. Here there would be no PDL to destroy, but there would be bone to destroy around the implant. So lack of or loss of the existing osteointegration would start happening. So any bone loss which is more than 0.2 millimeters annually is considered as peri-implantitis. A progressive bone loss which is more than 0.2 millimeters annually. Would you remember these values? These are crucial and are asked in the examination. Now, what are the goals of your implant treatment for these patients? The major goal for elderly patients to choose implant and advise them implants is to improve their chewing comfort, most importantly, so they can eat their food properly. And that, of course, affects their general health because of the nutrition. And it also improves their GI health. They would not have to be, digesting the semi-chewed food. So improved chewing leads to the overall improvement of the health. So comfort, function, and aesthetics are the major role of your implant treatment. Similarly, the social, economic, and time factors and other resources, as I covered previously also, that socially, economically, and maintenance resources and whether the patient has time to go for maintenance appointments or not are important. Then what are the risk of complications? So the case selection based on the patient-related factors is also crucial. So all this should be assessed before you advise implant treatments. Now let's talk about what are the most successful implant treatments and which lead to most challenges and difficult maintenance phases. Do you want to now in the examination, if the question is given to you, whether you would go for fixed single crown on the implant? And let's talk about the most common theme, which would be the complete edentulosum. Is that right? You would find most frequently complete edentulosum in your 80 plus patients, but where to advise fixed prosthesis on implants or where to advise removable prosthesis on implants. Let's talk about the comparisons of their success rates. and you have, by the scientific evidence, what answer to choose. So single tooth implant crowns, they have a lot of benefit over the treatment alternatives, which is your FPDs. Conventional FPDs, they chop down the healthier teeth. So definitely single tooth implant, it's quite a no-brainer. If there is no contraindication, single tooth implant should be chosen because it would be better than your conventional fixed prosthesis. And there have been long-term retrospective cohort studies available which have found that the survival rate of single implant supported crown either was comparable or even exceeded that of your conventional FPDs. So this has been successfully replacing your FPDs now, right? Especially with the younger population, single tooth loss is easily replacing your FPDs. The cost benefit ratio is definitely more beneficial. It is more cost effective compared to your FPDs. Longer lasting, not affecting adjacent healthy teeth, because in FPD, after 5 to 10 years, you're also sacrificing 2 healthy teeth. So definitely it is becoming your first treatment of choice. Is that right? And we have been choosing those as answers in the examination also, especially with your single tooth loss. I've given you in the mock examination also. I think in the Ninja mocks, you have been getting situations where the single teeth are getting lost and we are choosing implants over your FPDs, right? But the only challenge that you may find is in the older population, in that in the coming 10 to 20 years, if you give them implants, it would last them 10 to 20 years, but they would lose their dexterity, their oral hygiene maintenance, right? And that's why it may bring the complications. So for young patients, definitely it's no-brainer. It's easier choice. But for your older patient, it still brings a dilemma. And that is why correct treatment choice based on other factors. If the children are involved, how involved they are, how supportive they are of their parents, and what are their social factors, economic factors, and further time and maintenance and resources. So you would apply those concepts based on available information in the history. Now in the edentulous situations, edentulous, let's talk about the mandible first and then we will go to the maxilla. So in the edentulous mandible, you can utilize your either removable complete dentures or fixed implant prosthesis, also known as your all-on-4. For your removable implant over dentures, minimum 2 are required, right? So 2 implants are given bilaterally between the foramens, mental foramens, is that correct? That's where 2 implants are given in the mandible to support your mandibular implant supported over denture. It is the most accepted protocol. 1, 3, or 4 implants may have been proposed or may be given, but 2 are the most commonly number of implants that are given. The case selection would require the available bone thickness, height, and width, right? And it has been found that it gives the patient great satisfaction and improved masticatory functional capacity when the implant over dentures were given compared to your conventional full lower dentures over the period of 10 years. And you know, when you give your conventional full dentures, maxilla versus mandible, the challenge comes mostly with the mandible because the height is lost and the retention is very difficult. We all have seen those patients in our clinic. We know this is a studied and an evidential fact that mandibular conventional dentures are difficult to make and to achieve stability and retention. That is why the mandibular implant supported over dentures are better than your conventional mandibular over dentures. Clear for everyone? So if there is no contraindication to implant and the case selection comes, you would prefer implant supported over dentures versus your conventional over dentures. But if a patient comes who's been wearing dentures from the last 10-15 years and he's comfortable with his mandibular dentures, conventional dentures, would you move him from your conventional dentures to the implant supported over dentures? Absolutely not, because if he's satisfied, he's working with it. From an older existing patient, there is no requirement to move him to the implant supported dentures. But if it's a new patient, has no previous experience with the conventional dentures, then definitely the implant supported mandibular overdentures would be beneficial for them, right? And if the patient comes who has a loose previous mandibular dentures, right? So if they are not satisfied with loose mandibular dentures, they are your ideal patients. Instead of relining their existing dentures, transfer them to your implant supported overdentures. So this is a classic scenario that can come in exam. Would you choose the answer correctly here? An existing denture wearing patient, conventional denture wearing patient with loose dentures, not being satisfied with the fit of the denture and the option given to convert him to your implant supported overdenture. Would you find improvement in his oral health and function, mastication, and overall satisfaction? Yes. So a dissatisfied patient with an existing conventional denture is an ideal case to convert to implant supported overdenture. Does that make sense for everybody? These are your little nuances that are asked in exam. And unless you have read those, understood those, and you're aware of those concepts, you will only be making guesswork in the examination. And we don't go to this exam with any amount of guesswork. Every question that you are attempting in my mocks, whether it be Ninja, whether it be your subject-wise mocks, infection control guideline mocks, X-ray mocks, whatever mocks you're taking during the program, no question should be marked as your guesswork. It has to come with your evidential knowledge. Now, the challenge with the mandibular overdentures can be from your locator attachments, the abutment type. And have we not in September 24 seen those recent questions on the mandibular overdenture now? Challenges with the abutments. What are the locator type? So abutment types and attachment types can be different in the mandibular denture. They can be your locator attachments. They can be your bar connected, splintered attachments. They can be with the ball and socket. They can be with the magnets. So there are various kinds of attachments available for the mandibular overdenture. Although this article has not given which is more superior over the other, but the only benefit is standalone or freestanding attachments are better to maintain hygiene versus the bar connected ones. Yes, the bar one gives you better retention, but the freestanding attachments are better for maintaining oral hygiene. And we have seen situations where there can be peri-implant mucositis around these individual locator attachments also, where the tissue overgrowth is seen. That happens with the lack of maintenance of oral hygiene, or the placement of the abutment or implant was too deep within the mucosa, and then the mucosal overgrowth. So I've shown you the entire case report on the challenges around the freestanding attachments and how it leads to the gingival overgrowth and mucositis. What are the reasons? What are the managements? We have done it in the ultimate advanced file with the latest examination questions. If you're fully prepared with that, you have that case report and continue to review that, right? Because it's one of the most crucial articles. So definitely the case selection for the implant overdenture should be with the careful assessment, right? And especially where the satisfaction is not coming from your complete dentures, conventional complete dentures, there the implant supported ones should be chosen. The maintenance, yes, as I talked about, is that overdenture, mandibular implant overdentures require variable degree of maintenance at different stages of prosthesis lifespan. And the attachment design can impact that. Again, I talked about it. There is a ball and socket kind of design. There is a bar design. There is an individual locator attachment. Sometimes patients and their nurses also may have challenge with the locator attachments with the fit. In those cases, to simplify it, ball and socket or magnet types of attachment can be given. They are more easier to place. Locator attachment is slightly difficult. Then comes your bar in terms of difficulty of putting it. And the easiest one is ball and socket design or the magnet design. They're more easy to snap and fit, right? So choose your attachment type based on the patient's dexterity or their nurse's ease and staff ease if they are on the added support. Has been found when you use freestanding attachments versus the bar, there is another benefit that the individual locator attachments are associated with less candidal infections, right, around the abutments versus your bar attachments. So another benefit of bar and individual standing is that less candida around the individual locator attachment. And the second benefit is improved oral hygiene maintenance with your individual locator attachments. Would you remember these two benefits? Reduced risk of candida and improved oral hygiene maintenance. So reduced risk of denture related stomatitis. Fixed prosthesis is another replacement or a substitute or an alternative to your mandibular removable oral denture over denture, but it is not as preferred in mandible compared to your implant over denture. So there was a study where both were compared and it was found that the success rate were higher in your mandibular removable over dentures. See, it may be thought that your mandibular fixed one would have more, masticatory efficiency. But it was interesting outcome of the study which found that removable overdentures versus fixed implant prosthesis, it was found that patient found better mastication with your implant supported removable overdentures versus your fixed implant dentures. So if both the options are given, mandibular implant overdenture is more cost effective and better adaptation and better efficiency is achieved and seen by the patient. So if both are given, all on 4 fixed versus implant overdenture, what would you choose? Especially for these aging patients who are 70 plus, 80 plus, mandibular overdentures. Easier to maintain also because repairs are less required in your mandibular overdentures versus a fixed overdenture, fixed implant prosthesis. Now in the maxilla also, the overdentures and fixed prosthesis, we'll compare both. So in the maxilla, overdenture implant survival rates are definitely lower compared to your mandible. And it is low at 71%. The reason becomes the bone density type, right? But still it is not contraindicated. Definitely it can be given, but usually if your patient comes, usually with your maxilla, you have the height. So the stability and the retention is usually not a problem with the maxillary conventional dentures. That's why a conventional denture may be given. But if patient wants more retention, in that case, implant supported overdentures can be given. And in the fixed prosthesis also, all on 4. So that would be chosen. Again, that should not be preferred over the implant over dentures, again because of more number of implants are needed and the type 4 bone density is involved, so more failure is involved with your maxillary implant fixed prosthesis. Okay, either 4 or more implants are also given in maxilla, and 2 of the implants would definitely be lying in the type 4. So all on 4 is least preferred in maxilla compared to the mandible, right? So even in the maxilla, if you have to go with the implant supported prosthesis, prefer the removable implant overdenture. Again, the maintenance considerations are same. When you're giving the overdenture, individual locator attachments would be easier, but a fixed implant prosthesis in the maxilla is definitely a high cost, and the benefits would be lower because the failure rates are higher. So it is a challenge for maintenance and repair process with the fixed implant prosthesis. So if you, again, the choice is given in the maxilla also, implant supported overdentures should be chosen over the fixed implant prosthesis. Clear for everyone, this one too? So again, when both were evaluated who wore the removable maxillary overdentures, they reported higher ratings of general satisfaction in terms of ability to speak, ease of cleaning compared with the fixed prosthesis. So now you know the verdict and you know the final conclusion that implant supported overdentures should be the choices in this population. The case selection requires 3 crucial criteria. The maintenance phase is also extremely important. What kind of attachments you would prefer for your overdentures? So all these points are clear for everyone. The learning takeaway points. So again, this summarizes the case selection in the aging population of the implants, right? And then we will have the fourth part of this series. It would not be next week, but probably in February somewhere. And then I would summarize it with them and finalize and finish the entire series of implant by doing the most important articles. So next one is the most important of the all 4 parts of this series, and that would be the maintenance phase. So I'm sure we have heard that term over and over now, maintenance of implants, right? Maintenance of implants, how to identify the peri-implant disease, because that confuses you a lot. You bring me and send me so many doubts on implant diseases. Ma'am, if this is the probing depth, these are the findings, how to choose with 6 mm probing depth, 8 mm probing depth. Do you want to know crystal clear criteria to choose between peri-implant disease? Because TG only gives 1 paragraph and there are so many textbooks, which one to follow, which one to not. That is why we'll go with the Australian guidelines to identify the disease and to learn how to maintain. So different kinds of flosses are used, sometimes conventional floss, sometimes super floss, where to choose what. There is so much confusion despite doing it so many times. So we will end that confusion once for all and for good in the last and the fourth part of this series, which would be the maintenance phase of the implants. And those who have not joined us, if you want to go for our crash course, please message me on my WhatsApp and I'll text you my WhatsApp number here. You can message me. You can get it at 799. Your crash course, we have this huge discount, which is only limited for the next 2 days, only for 799. So if you want to join for the crash course, it would provide you all the hot topics, hot notes, and the power notes with the most important ultimate advanced files and the mega master file classes. So that's your opportunity to grab our crash course. And for the September dual course also, if you want to start for the September now and get the 9-month advantage of WinSpurt preparation, please message us and get our dual course as well. So these are the 2 available courses with us for the March and the September. And thank you so much for being the wonderful, wonderful audience. Thanks, Aurora. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'll see you guys next week. I'll create a poll on what to cover next week. I want to take a break from the implant and do another topic. So I'll give you 2-3 options and let's decide what we can do for the next power session on Monday. Thank you so much. I hope you guys learned a lot and it gives you far more clarity on choosing the cases for older patients where you were lost, where implant overdentures, where implant fixed prosthesis, and whether to go in the 80+ patients or not. What are the challenges of different attachment types? It is all in front of you as per the scientific guidelines from the Australia directly, right? So thank you so much. Have a fabulous week ahead. Take your Ninja Level 4. If you're already enrolled, you know that Ninja Level 4 is released now. So Ninja Mock 4 is really hard level. I hope you get good scores. Do send me your scores also personally, and we'll analyze that and we'll see what more improvements are needed and how you can enhance those scores. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for our internal ultimate advanced file classes, where we'll continue with our oral medicine section and we'll talk about more important concepts. And I have some new references coming up, so a lot of learning to go on. All right, thank you so much. I'll see you on the WhatsApp for our doubt solving. Thank you.